Hello and welcome. I'm Tony Messia with the Charlotte Ledger. You're watching the Reporters Roundtable, at which we talk about the news of the week, of the last couple weeks, with Ledger reporters who are out there talking to people and reporting and writing and getting that news and information out to you. I'm here today with Ashley Fay and Lindsay Banks, who are editors, along with as am I at the Charlotte Ledger. And we have a special guest today, Taylor Douglas. Taylor is an intern with us. She's working with us this summer. Taylor, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on.
And before we get going, and I know we talk to Ashley and Lindsay all the time, but could you maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing for us this summer?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Taylor, and I'm a student at UNC Charlotte. I'm going into my senior year, which is crazy, but I'm a communication student, so I'm majoring in communications, minoring in journalism. And with the Ledger this summer, I'm a social media and audience engagement intern. So what I'm doing is a lot of the social media stuff. So when you see static posts or reels or you hear this voice, that's me.
Right.
And I'm going out, what I like about this role is I get to do like social media stuff, creating graphics and stuff like that. But I also get to go out and do a little bit of reporting. Um, this week, we'll talk about it a little later. I got to go out to Carowinds. If you saw that reel, that was me.
We'll get into that. We'll
We'll get into that.
definitely get into that. But
We'll
thanks.
get
Thanks, and we're glad you're here. And we've got a few interns this summer doing a few different things, and
Mhm.
it's great to kind of work with folks who bring in a different points of view and have different skills and can kind of help us out. So obviously glad that you're aboard. I know we'll look forward to seeing more of your stuff over the next few weeks, mostly on Instagram, Facebook, but kind of throughout everything that we do. So if you just tuned in, you're watching the Reporters Roundtable with the Charlotte Ledger. And if this is a chance for us to just sort of talk about some of the things that we've been covering, that we've been seeing the last couple of weeks in Charlotte. But we also want to hear from you. So if you're watching and you have a question, go ahead, drop it in the chat. We'll try and get to that. But we're going to go through some of the stories we've been working on the last couple of weeks and hopefully give you some perspectives on those that maybe you haven't considered. I want to start a little bit, with sort of some of the serious news. We'll cover a bunch of different topics, lighter things, heavier things. There's been a lot of talk lately about things going on with the city of Charlotte government. A number of things on those fronts. The big news, from last May, from May, early May, was Mayor Vi Lyles announced fairly suddenly that she was not going to be. That she was resigning as mayor effective the end of June. We're now in the middle of June, just about, and so that time is upon us. So the city council will select a replacement. They're meeting with a lot of the finalists on Monday, and they're supposed to select that person by June 22nd. And I know we're hearing a lot about that. Ashley, I've been covering that. You have your ear to the ground. What are you hearing? What do you think's going on?
Yeah, Tony, I think you categorized it best in this morning's ledger. It has had a little bit of a reality TV show energy to it. A lot of folks on city council want to be mayor, but we only saw, as far as I understand, the latest, only one current council member has applied to be the interim mayor position. That's, of course, James Mitchell, who is currently mayor pro tem. I know you've noted this several times. It's likely that council is going to go with someone who's familiar with the process, who has experience. Of course, it was open to anyone who's a registered Democrat, City of Charlotte resident, I think at least 18 years old, but those are really the only requirements for the job. I guess we'll see what happens on Monday. Well, I won't, I'll be on vacation, but maybe Tony, you will.
We'll be
But
watching it.
yeah, I mean, I don't know that there'll be a lot of surprises here. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't say for sure, but it's possible there will be. I think you need six council members to approve whoever they pick, and getting to that magic number has been a little difficult with some policy decisions on council lately. So, Tony, what's your read on it?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, only one sitting council member, James Smudgy Mitchell, applied. So the other people are not sitting council members. You have more sort of community folks. You have maybe a couple business folks. You have a former city council member and county commission member, Harold Cogdell. So you have a number of people. So we're just going to have to kind of see what happens. I don't think there's any consensus pick yet. I hear different names every day, new ones coming up every day. So we're just obviously going to keep an eye on that. And this is a role. This is leading the city of Charlotte, and it's kind of interesting the process. You think usually when you hire somebody, you might do a background check. You might check their references. I mean, this is all it's kind of a political free-for-all in the sense that all it takes is 6 votes from the city council. And, if you go with someone who's not a politician, have they been really vetted? Do we know who these people are? I mean, some of them are community activists, been in the city for a while. It's just kind of an interesting thing to lead the city of Charlotte for the next year and a half. $60,000 a year salary, $20,000 expenses. It's a big role.
Yeah, and 18 months in this position, I mean, that could be a catapult to something bigger and a springboard to something bigger politically. So I'm interested to see how this process is going to play out.
Yep. And this is all intertwined with some of the other interesting things that are going on with the city right now. We've written a bunch in the last couple of months about these I-77 toll lanes, which got killed off a couple of weeks ago. Written about data centers. They put in a moratorium this week. And, Ashley, you've been covering a lot of that. What's going on there?
Yeah, so Monday night, council voted unanimously to put in a 150-day moratorium on new data center development. This was not a surprise. It's been kind of anticipated for several weeks now that this is the direction the council was probably going to go in. There was a lot of vocal opposition. There's a lot of vocal opposition that's come to council lately against data centers, particularly one proposed in East Charlotte. That is not a hyperscale data center, which I think where a lot of the controversy is. These kind of really large 100 megawatt plus facilities, 1 million square feet plus, that have gotten a lot of controversy. Incidentally, there's 2 of those in Charlotte, and they will not qualify under the moratorium because those were previously approved before the moratorium went in place. So I do think that is an interesting thing to note. But yeah, I mean, honestly, Tony, I was trying to think this week, and I talked to a lot of folks kind of in my orbit. I don't know that a citywide development moratorium has ever passed in the city of Charlotte. And I was trying to discern, is this because a reaction to the data center conversation, which has become so hot button across the country, and it's just now kind of being localized here in Charlotte? Or is this kind of a sign of changing tide on council, a little bit more skeptical around maybe development and business? I know Renee Johnson at the vote this week said, you called it the M word a year ago. You didn't say the word moratorium, and now we have one in place. So very interested to see kind of what happens. Council's kind of limited in what they can do around data center regulation. But I am just curious if this has more ripple effects for how folks on council are approaching development.
Yeah, and the business community, we did a piece last week, you and I did, Ashley, just looking at the concerns of the business community about some of these recent decisions and some of the way things are going. And there is a lot of concern that if they're getting a little more sort of populist, or call it what you want, community based, or putting the brakes on growth, what's the effect of that? Is that gonna put a damper on the ability to recruit companies here? Is this going to be seen as a business-friendly city? There are a lot of conversations going on right now about that. And that story we did really sort of struck a chord. I think we heard from a lot of people with a lot of thoughts about that and in the way that Charlotte makes decisions now. And is that changing? It used to be sort of a lot of things hammered out behind closed doors and presented as done. That is a traditional model that has gone on for a long time, for decades in Charlotte. Is that changing? What does that mean? Who's in charge? Who's making the decisions? These are all important things. So we definitely want to keep documenting that. Want to switch a little bit to something a little bit lighter. I know, Taylor, you went out this week and you went down to Carowinds, not just to ride rides and get the big Slurpees or ice creams or go in the water park, but what did you do down at Carowinds this week?
Yeah, I got to go out to a media event where they said they were announcing a major ride. Didn't know too much going in. I had heard a couple rumors of it being a water ride, and lo and behold, it was a water ride. It's going to be called Ripborn Falls. It's going to be huge, basically. this huge new signature attraction. It's going to be like, I think they said like over 100 foot tall. They have the tallest log flume drop, breaking 3 world records. It's going backwards at one point. It's a lot going on. I went out and I got to hear from, at the event, Chris Foci spoke, and also Bridget Bywater, the president of Carowinds. Chris Foci, he's the PR guy over at Carowinds. And, they were talking about how this came from, like, the development of this came from hearing a lot of feedback from park goers. Everyone wanted a water ride. And I know in the past, Carowinds had, they had a log flume, and they also had Rip Roaring Rapids, which is actually where Rip Roaring Falls is going to be, on the old site of where Rip Roaring Rapids was. The water ride that was like a water rapids ride, basically. It's going to be over there, and it's been in the works for a while. They were pretty much saying, and it's going to be huge.
So this is a big one. It's a 100-foot drop. They said it gets up to 50 miles an hour. It's going to set a number of world records of log flume drop height, highest, camelback going backwards. These kind of obscure categories. Just see a show of hands. How many here would ride that ride? Would everybody ride that ride? Lindsay,
I would do it. I don't want to be a part of the first, couple dozen groups that go down. Let's work out the kinks a little
I'm
bit.
sure they tested exhaustively before they opened it to the public.
Yes, they did. That was a topic of conversation, how long it's going to be commissioned for, and people making sure it's going to be, safe to ride. So.
Yeah, they test these things out, and I'm sure it'll be fine. But they're looking at opening that when? Is it next year?
Next year, yeah. When I went out there, I did get to tour the construction site. Right now, I didn't see any like metal pieces or anything that's like parts of the ride, but you can see where they're mapping out in the dirt. They're telling us this is where this is going to be, this is where the drop's going to be. So next year, not sure when next year. I think he had said that by next season, so by next summer.
I think it sounds kind of refreshing. It's hot in Charlotte right now. It's hot in the summer, and if you get soaked going on the new log flume ride at Carowinds, that's pretty neat. Speaking of summer weather, Lindsay, I know you were out at a new park this week. You went out there, you reported it. You didn't just take the press release and rewrite it. You went out and asked some questions about this new park in Mint Hill. It was hot out there, I understand. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so a new park, Mecklenburg County Parks and Rec, cut the ribbon on it yesterday. And it's kind of a big deal because new parks don't really open that often in this park system. I think you see like a lot of renovations and upgrades, but like an actual new physical space, it's a pretty big deal. And this park is 91 acres. So it's not just a little small neighborhood park, it's pretty expansive. And so they invited the community and media, and there was, county commissioners and park staff there, and just to kind of, I guess, have a ceremonial ribbon cutting of the park. But there were already kids playing on the playground. There's a really nice nature-themed playground. There's also a pretty big splash pad, which I was very envious of the children running around in the splash pad yesterday. There's also restrooms and 2 miles of walking trails. There's 4, I believe, pickleball courts. Which that was my first time actually seeing a designated pickleball court, not a tennis court that just had pickleball lines painted on it. So, and then there's also a basketball court. And yeah, so it's a really beautiful park. I will say my one, I guess, critique right now of the park is that there isn't a lot of shade. They have planted trees, so it's going to take a while for those to get up there and provide that shade. But the splash pad, is there this summer.
It was hot out there. I remember you said you were kind
It
of
was very hot. Everyone was sweat, but we were all in it together. So all the sweat stains on everyone's clothes. It was a mutual understanding.
Sounds great. Yeah, I mean, the officials were out there wearing suits and stuff, right?
Yeah, they were. So, yeah, I mean, but it's mid-June in Charlotte, so what can you do?
Yeah, that's the way it goes. Also want to talk in this theme of sort of summer. If people are looking to get out of town, one of their, like this transition, one of their options is to now fly on what I think is now a daily flight from Charlotte to the United Arab Emirates. Ashley, you had some dealings with this. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, great segue there, Tony.
Hey,
Yes. So,
thanks.
so a Ledger reader, a subscriber, Kevin Johnson, he's a real estate agent here in Charlotte who I've known for a long time. He reached out to us, kind of in early May, I guess, and said, "Hey, I'm going on this flight. Would you guys want to hear about my experience?" And, we get a lot of pitches and a lot of them actually just don't make sense for us. But this one kind of made me pause because I think we all kind of agreed that folks might be curious about this flight. It's a new airline, a new carrier for Charlotte Douglas International Airport as far as Etihad Airlines. As far as I know, it's the longest direct flight we've ever had out of CLT. Over 7,000 miles, 14-hour flight one way. And I just thought, it might be interesting to learn about that. So, sat down with Kevin a few weeks ago. It was a 2-hour conversation that we distilled into about a 2,000 word story, as told in his words, just about the experience of flying on Etihad, and what he kind of did over there, both in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. I myself have flown on Emirates before. My husband's from India, so we have flown to Abu Dhabi as a stopover. Very nice that we don't have to do the transition to New York to Etihad or to Abu Dhabi now. It's direct now from Charlotte, which is great. Sounds like it's a little bit more elevated than some other international flights that Kevin has taken. He compared it. He's been to 22 countries from CLT, I think. And he said like they serve actual utensils on the flight, instead of plasticware. I think one of his meals was like roast lamb, and it just was a little bit maybe more elevated than the other sort of airlines he's experienced. And certainly he was pampered while he was in the Middle East. He said that they were basically rolling out the red carpet for him everywhere. Tourism's obviously very much down right now with the war and kind of conflict in the Middle East. So he had a lot of these big tourist attractions like the Burj Khalifa to himself. Anyway, I don't want to spoil the whole story. I think you should go read it. It's open to all of our subscribers. Ran in last Saturday's edition, and it's told very colorfully in Kevin's words, and I think that's part of the appeal of the story. But learned a lot, and I don't know, it could be interesting to check it out one day.
It is amazing all these places you can now fly nonstop out of Charlotte. Obviously have a lot of Europe, but now this sort of opens up, the Middle East. And I was looking at it the other day, and it's not just going there. And I think this flight, I think he said he paid about $1,400 round trip. So it's not, I don't want to say that's like cheap, but although he said once he got there, things were on kind of discount because of the a little bit of turmoil in that part of the world. But if you're flying somewhere, if you're flying, I know you mentioned this, you have some familiarity with this, Ashley. Like if you're flying to India or you're flying somewhere in that part of the world, it's a lot easier now to do that through Abu Dhabi than it is to go to New York and then Dubai or whatever. It cuts down a stop, and you sometimes pay for that on airlines, but it can be a lot more convenient. We're talking about these long flights. If you cut down a few hours on those flights, I think that's a big help.
It's a game changer, honestly. And Kevin spoke to a lot of folks. He had his reporter hat on while he was doing this trip, and he said a lot of the people who were traveling from CLT to Abu Dhabi were folks going to India who live in Charlotte and who live in the Carolinas.
All right, Lindsay, a little closer to home. You had a piece last week looking at this neighborhood, sort of emerging neighborhood north of Noda, around or North Tryon, Sugar Creek area. We got a lot of feedback on this story. Tell us about, what you wrote about and what the response was.
Yeah, really close to home for me. I live in Noda, and a few months ago, I was looking for a new dog groomer for my dog, and I found one called, I think they're called the Dogs Club, CLT, and they're in this new area. And so when I was driving there, the independent picture house is, I guess, the anchor tenant of this new area we're talking about. So I had been to IPH before, but it had been a while. And so when I was driving to the dog groomer, and I just noticed all this development that just feel like it sprung up overnight. I mean, I guess that's how it happens, I guess. But still, I don't know. So it got me thinking, is this area considered NODA? What is it considered? And so I talked to a developer in the area, Tony Kuhn with the Flywheel Group. I talked to business owners, Brad Ritter with IPH, also the owner of Soul Gastro Lounge, just to kind of get a sense of what they think the identity of the neighborhood is. Is it still considered NODA? Is it Sugar Creek? Does it need its own name? And I think the consensus from those that are living and working and developing in this area is that it is its own neighborhood. And it kind of reminds me of South End and Lower South End, or LoSo, as it's kind of maybe become known to some people against everyone's will. And just kind of this part of, a neighborhood that's maybe growing and expanding to the point where, it's become its own thing. And so so I wrote about that and the area, just to give everyone an idea, it's kind of the area between East Sugar Creek and Raleigh Street, North Tryon, that kind of area near the Independent Picture House and Soul Gastro Lounge. So we did poll our readers when we published that story, asking them for some name suggestions, and we did get some, I think, serious ones. We also got some not so serious ones, like not Noda or no Noda. I'm trying to think of some others. I don't know, Tony or Ashley.
Dano was one of my favorites.
Dano. I think Independent District was one, kind of going around the Independent Picture House. And then the area has kind of unofficially been known as the Trailhead Arts District. It's been 10 years in the making, this neighborhood. And so that was kind of the I guess workshop name. But everyone was kind of saying that they don't think it's that anymore. It's kind of evolved, and they want to differentiate the arts. Noda's the arts district in Charlotte, so they don't want to be too close in name, I guess, to that.
It is sort of interesting. This is one of those things that people love to kind of talk about and debate, whether it's on social media or wherever. But like neighborhood names and how many of them are contrived and how many of them are marketing driven and how many are authentic and why do we call it this? I mean, South End hasn't always been called South End. They made up the name South End, like in the late 1990s, and it's kind of taken off, and that's what we know it as, and it's not controversial. But then you have some of these others that don't quite stick as well, like Fremore West. Kind of another one they're trying over by Wesley Heights. I don't know how that's doing. I know Ashley, this is a hobby horse of Ashley's as well.
I can't stand it. I can't stand these acronyms of yeah, I just can't do it. Like Mora's another one. I know that's Monroe Road, and I get it. Like if the neighborhood and the community rallies around it, I'm a little bit more on board, but it's going to be hard for me to get behind no Noda if that ends up being the winner. But
Yeah.
it's funny. I just wanted to real quick, Lindsay. It came up this week actually, and this story published over a week ago as of the time. I was at Commercial Real Estate Women Charlotte, and someone in the audience asked the planning director, Monica Holmes, like, who comes up with neighborhood names? Does the city come up with that? Like, how does that work? And it spurred a discussion at my table. So people are very passionate about it.
Yeah, I
People
think
have
people think the city does, but they really don't. I mean, it's the neighbors, and it's also, I think, the developers and business owners mainly. Um, yeah, but it had this area, I think, and we did get a lot of comments and feedback that people think that it doesn't need its own name and that we have too many neighborhood names in Charlotte, which I can see that perspective. And I kind of agree to an extent. But I do understand wanting to have, an identity and, like you said, Ashley, something to kind of rally around.
It's always interesting. That gets a lot of people talking. Another one that got people talking a lot this week was this. It always sort of floors me, like what people will talk about. But somebody put a sign that said Mattress Center inside of the old Soul Gastro Lounge on Central Avenue, and it spawned all kinds of news articles. It's like a deepening mystery. Is there really a mattress company going to be opening up in this, what used to be this nice sort of funky, eclectic area that's now has a bunch of modern apartments, luxury apartments near it? That set off a big discussion. Ashley, you wrote about this a little bit this week. Thoughts on the significance of this?
Well, it's such a Charlotte story, right? Because Soul Gastro Lounge was there for so many years. It's this building right at the corner of Pecan and Central. Building was up for sale a few years ago. Rent supposedly went up astronomically. Soul said we can't afford it and left. And now, the rumor is that the upstairs space that was Soul could become a Wild Wing Cafe. And then the bottom, there's this Mattress Center sign. And I think Axios Charlotte did a nice job kind of looking into this and like did
I
a
mean,
deep dive.
they reported that there was a sign there and that
Well,
nobody has any idea what it is, but people are talking about it. And yes, there's the bigger significance or something, right?
Well, I mean the rental rates, and I think that was an important point made in the story, is like it's so expensive to lease space now in Plaza Midwood. And I think that's why we're seeing so many of these chains. The Commonwealth Project right across the street. I mean, you've got Sweetgreen, you've got Van Leeuwen, you've got Uchi, like you've got these very kind of high-end national chains and retail groups that can afford to pay a lot of money in rents. And I feel like that space now, like a chain is the only thing that can afford it. But man, a wing chain and a mattress restaurant, if that ends up being the reality, like that is Plaza Midwood's going to rally. Like they are not going to be happy about that.
Taylor, Lindsay, any thoughts?
No, I saw the Wild Wing Cafe rumor, I think last week, and Ashley and I kind of talked about it, and we were like, there's no way. But I guess
You
time
know,
will
that's
tell.
coming, and I would say I would put it above rumor. I mean, Clayton Seeley and Jason Thomas have covered development for a long time, and they have a pretty good track record. So it's coming from somewhere. It's not. It hasn't been. Nothing's been announced. Nothing's been
Right,
announced. That's important to say,
right,
but
right.
it's not completely out of someone's imagination. I don't think.
Yeah.
All right. Also, you know, and before we wrap up, I do want to acknowledge that you know, we try to keep talking about what's current and what people are talking about. And it's my understanding, although I am not in the demographic, that there's a reality show called Love Island that this week got a new contestant on it from North Carolina, although I think he lives in Charleston now. Can someone who is tuned into this fill me in?
I can. Okay. So the contestant in question, I don't know his last name, but I know his first name is Caleb. He's from Asheboro, North Carolina, and he came in as what's called a bombshell. It's basically someone, to make a long story short, someone who comes in after the original cast has already come in. He's coming in, his whole brand is like cowboy. Um, there's someone there who said she wanted a cowboy, so we'll see how that goes. And that's,
So the
he
premise
hasn't
of this
even talked
reality show is what?
is well, the premise is supposed to be that you come and you're trying to find love. However, for the winners, they do win. I think it's 100K. They win a sum of money. So the premise is that you're supposed to find love and leave the island with your person. And you
Uh-huh.
And it's
try to stay along for as long as you can because you at the end of the day you do want to be the person who wins the money. So
and it's a very long season. I mean, it's like over a month and it's one episode every night and it's kind of being filmed somewhat live. Like they film, like they're there now filming probably like maybe Monday's episode or something like that. So they're there for a very long time. And I mean, most of them are there to be social media influencers after the fact, but we do have some North Carolina representation this year and we did last year as well. So
So which is better, Love is Blind or Love Island?
personally, I'm going Love Island. I like Love is Blind. I think, as Lindsay said, I think a big part of what makes Love Island is so good is the live aspect and like I guess the community that forms around it. It just seems like something a lot of people are watching all at once. And then also you have the live voting aspect, which I think is super cool. I don't think Love is Blind has that. So I think for me it's Love Island.
Okay,
I
well, I
would
just wanted
agree.
to explore this topic, something people are talking about. I do want to point out that North Carolina also has a rich history of reality show TV stars. Just jotting down some names from American Idol: Kelly Pickler, Fantasia Barrino, Scotty McCreery, Clay Aiken. Does anybody remember Clay Aiken? I think that was 2003. It was a long time ago. And then, of course, you had Emily Maynard, who was the Bachelorette at a season of The Bachelorette filmed in Charlotte in 2012.
And we also had a whole season of Love is Blind set in Charlotte. The whole 10 episodes were here in Charlotte. That's a big one too.
A lot of people think Charlotte's boring, but apparently, if Hollywood is coming here and filming reality shows they think are doing well, maybe it's not so boring.
True.
Yeah.
All right, any final thoughts?
Not on me, my end.
No, stay cool out there this weekend. We're
Uh,
in a
I'm
heated
sorry,
season.
Sean chimes in. Top Chef.
Oh,
Top
definitely.
Chef. Let's not forget about Top Chef. Thank you, Sean. And
Very
thanks
nice.
to all of our viewers tuning in. We've got nice notes from John and Stan, and of course, Vicky. Appreciate Vicky being here. She's here every time, and appreciate all of our viewers and listeners and readers. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.